In many ways, and in fact, in most ways, Blade Runner is a great movie. It looks great, even by today's standards. It sounds great. It had a director with great sci-fi creds. It had a great cast, and it was based on great source material in Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Despite this, it performed very poorly commercially, both in absolute terms and compared to similar movies of the same era. For more on that, check out my previous video in this Blade Runner series. From a writer's perspective, there's a very obvious reason Blade Runner flopped, and it's this guy. Not Harrison Ford, but Rick Deckard, the movie's protagonist. A good protagonist is what gets an audience invested in a story. We spend most of the time with them. We see the world through their eyes, and their actions drive the plot. Without the right protagonist, a story will feel emotionally flat, something critics and its own star accused Blade Runner of. A common misconception is that this means protagonists need to be likable, but that's just not true. Shows, books, and movies, from Squid Game to Fight Club to Breaking Bad to American Psycho, have done just fine with unlikable protagonists. But from a writing perspective, there are some things a protagonist does need. They need consistent personality traits so their behaviours feel believable. They need to have some kind of character arc, a transformational journey, and they must have clear wants and needs driving their behaviours.
I want more life, Father.
What Deckard lacks most in Blade Runner are these wants and needs. Sure, he has a plot goal. Kill the androids, get the bounty. But why? What's he going to do with the bounty when he gets it? Why put himself in such danger? Why not just give up when the going gets tough? When Deckard is brought in by the cops, he initially turns down the mission they offer him. But it's not really clear why. Perhaps one of the writers remembered from film school that the protagonist is supposed to refuse the call to adventure at some point. But in World, it's really not clear. He just says, "I was out, and now I'm more out." The police chief Bryant then says,
"You know the score, pal. You're not cops, you're little people."
But we have no idea what little people means to Deckard. If he cares so much about not being little people, why did he leave his post to begin with? At the end of the movie, he asks for Rachel Rosen to be spared and heads off with her. But so what? What's he given up in exchange? What's changed in his worldview? It's totally unclear, so the moment has no weight to it. Without a properly motivated protagonist, it's almost impossible for an audience to care about them, or the plot of the story they're in, which means poor word of mouth, and after the initial marketing push, poor financial performance. For contrast, let's take a look at Book Deckard from Do Androids Dream. I'm going to give a high-level overview, but I'll leave a link to a more detailed analysis below. At the very start of the story, Book Deckard wants to get enough money to buy a real living animal. It drives his engagement with the plot, because the only way he can get that much money is to keep hunting rogue androids. He wants the animal, in part because it's a status symbol, but also to feel connected to another living thing, and as such to be able to feel alive himself. This deeper want, to feel alive, is linked to his need. Years of killing androids have left Book Deckard jaded, numb, lacking in empathy. Rediscovering this empathy is what Deckard needs to get on with his life. Much of this is revealed through an argument with his wife, Iran. At the midpoint of the book, Deckard meets a fellow bounty hunter, Phil Resch. Resch is even more callous and jaded than Deckard, and acts as a metaphorical dark mirror. He is what Deckard will become if he doesn't change. By the end of the book, Deckard decides to change his life, to stop being a bounty hunter and to reconnect with his wife. He summarizes, "Even the electric things have their lives too, no matter how paltry those lives are." What's really great about this character arc is how its key moments are revealed really organically through interactions with other thematically important characters, like Resch and Iran, two characters who were left out of the movie. Now, I'm not saying that Blade Runner needed to be a more faithful adaptation of Do Androids Dream. While I love that book, Dick's style tends to be a bit quirky in a way that might not work on the big screen, but the comparison shows what was lost in translation and the consequences of not adequately replacing it. The really frustrating thing is that many of the parts that were needed to make the movie better were there somewhere. They just weren't used properly. Without getting sucked into writing a full fanfiction, here's some ideas of how movie Deckard could have been improved. Right at the start of the film, we get this line.
A new life awaits you in the off-world colony. The chance to begin again in a golden land of opportunity and adventure.
Getting to Mars would have been a great surface level want for movie Deckard. It would have given him a real reason for needing the bounty money from retiring the replicants, a reason to keep going. But unfortunately, it's never really mentioned again in the actual film. In the original theatrical release, a voiceover was added, and it mentions an ex-wife of Deckard's who, again, is never mentioned again. But perhaps she's on Mars, and Deckard is desperate to see her again, to win her back. This idea of chasing the past would have worked well with one of the key themes of the movie, the nature of memory.
All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain.
Instead of Bryant talking about being little people, he could convince Deckard to take the case by saying something like, "Listen, Deckard, tickets to Mars don't come cheap. If you ever want to see Iran again, this might be your last chance. I won't make you another offer like this one." Now, not only would we know why Deckard takes the case, but when at the end of the movie he decides to stay on Earth with Rachel, we'd know exactly what he's giving up. His character arc would be complete, giving up pining for the past and carving out an uncertain future with this replicant. And that's it. That's all I think it would have taken to change Blade Runner from a cult movie which flopped financially to a big hit with a broad audience. That's the power of proper storytelling, and it really sums up the mission statement of this channel. If you ever wanted to become a writer or improve your storytelling, I want to help you learn the tools and techniques the best writers use. I want to help you make those little tweaks to how you tell your stories which can make all the difference. I want you to find the success and the audience you deserve. If that sounds good to you, please support this channel with a like, a subscribe, and a comment below on what you'd like to talk about next. See you next time, and keep writing.